Welcome. Welcome back to the NexGen show. This is the show where we talk to interesting people you've not spoken to before. And I'm very excited about today's episode because we are talking to Laxshmaan Balakrishnan. He's a budding copywriter in our industry. So Laxshmaan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Very good, very good. So my first question normally is, why are you in advertising?
Well, I'm in advertising because it has been my passion ever since I was a kid. Ever since I was 5 or 6 years old, I've been obsessed with commercials. I didn't understand why at that time, but I was mesmerized by the ability of how you're able to condense a story in about 15 to 30 seconds. And as I grew older, I began to learn a lot more about the industry. And at the age of 15, my dad got me David Ogilvy's book. And that really, really changed my perspective.
Confessions of an Advertising Man.
Of course, that's the one.
You were obsessed with advertising. I find that term very interesting. You're a dream consumer.
Right. I mean, my love for the industry comes from the people that have shaped it and fundamentally what advertising is all about, which is the art of persuasion.
Now, in your perspective, since you are new to the industry, a couple of years, when you were young and now you are a professional, what is the difference that you have noticed in terms of change with regards to consumer behavior? Now that we are going into the marketing aspect of your job, what has changed? I don't think people are that obsessed with advertising.
Fundamentally, people don't like ads. Let's just put it out there.
Yes.
You know, there's this old quote from Howard Gassage, one of the advertising legends of the industry, and he said, people don't like ads. People like what they're interested in, what they're passionate about. And sometimes that's an ad. So if you look at the consumer landscape, advertising has always played in the space of the mind of the consumer. What are they into? What are the mediums they like? And we insert brands and messaging within these platforms. And that's how we're able to get people interested, is when we sort of adjust ourselves in the same playing field as they're at.
When you were saying insert is a very polite word. Some people would like to say interrupt them, and then try to, while they're being interrupted, feed them some commercial messaging. The challenges are very, very complicated nowadays with so many different, shall we say, platforms that are drawing attention. What do you think about TikTok?
You see, TikTok is an interesting platform because, for one, never have we had a platform where quite literally overnight you could see massive amounts of scale and attention. But on the downside of it, as a result, the younger generation and the upcoming ones, Gen Z, Gen Alphas, they have lost their attention spans. And that is a massive concern today, unfortunately. But it all comes down to not the platform, but rather how do you utilize the platform to create the kinds of content and messaging that go beyond just being a surface level thing that you want to doom scroll with. You want to really insert yourself into the platform and understand it.
Do you see the some sort of merger with paid content and free content and, when you look at advertisements now, rather, say, for example, they are not really advertisements anymore. They are more, we find, sponsored content. Do you find those lines blurring?
Right now, there is a blurring between like what traditional platforms used to be and where they're going. Right now, there's the creator economy. That is booming. So, again, going back to platforms and people in general, people today want to associate themselves with creators. You see, that's where they're going. So when they do that, when we leverage creators, when we leverage real people that people listen to every day, there's a sense of trust that is formed. And that is what people want. So the lines are blurring, but I think fundamentally the messaging remains the same. It's just a different medium.
Why is it that people are leaning towards so-called influencers or content creators as such?
That's simple. Authenticity. Because there is a stigma associated with commercials or brands is that they just say things as it is. But content creators, on the other hand, they come from real backgrounds, real people that people know and whatnot. So when content creators are authentic, people resonate with that. They feel that. They want to associate themselves with that.
Of course, it can be a double-edged sword also.
Of course.
The content creator could end up in some controversy. So the audience may not, be there anymore. These are the challenges. What do you find most difficult when you look at your task as a copywriter?
My task as a copywriter has always evolved over time. In terms of difficulty, it's not so much a difficulty. I see it as a challenge in which how do I adapt my craft to suit a wide variety of people, needs, and mindsets. You see, and that for me is a learning curve. How you speak on social is different from how you write a traditional ad. And for me, it's finding that balance between platforms.
Do you think that copywriting as a craft is dying? In the sense that, let me reframe this. Content creators or the ones, or the influencers with the sound bites are now the headlines, so to speak, in many cases. Where do copywriters fit?
The role of a copywriter, as I said before, evolves with their craft and with their time. And you see, the problem is right now, everyone thinks that they can write. But just because you can write doesn't mean you have honed in on your craft. And as a result, and I've noticed this myself, more and more people sound the same. Everyone's out there putting out the same messaging, the same format. And this goes to show that craft still remains a very, very important aspect. It's because when you've honed in on your craft, you know how to approach things differently. You don't all sound the same.
That's a very, very interesting and refreshing way to put it. As we know, copywriters have to deal with complex problems and distill it into some simplified way that can be utilized to convey the messaging effectively. There are a lot of buzzwords being used. I sense, like for example, Donald Trump, if you listen to him, the best ever,
the biggest,
like never before. Actually, I see that they were all the words that are used by copywriters. Mm-hmm. So I do you see that happening a lot? I see that happening a lot, even with content creators. They are using these hooks, copy hooks, in their narrative.
Of course, because at the end of the day, the hook really matters. See, what you say in the first couple of seconds will determine whether or not people pay attention. And as a copywriter, we have developed certain hooks, certain words that really catch your attention. And we see this being translated as more and more people come into this field. They begin to use these terminologies because they know it works.
Well, there are people who use four-letter words as hooks, if you know what I mean, Laxshmaan.
Of course.
And of course, as copywriters, we have to draw the line. You have brand guidelines to work within. You have context within your writing space. Which sort of copywriting style do you like to follow, or rather you like to emulate? The short form, the long form?
To me, if I had a choice, it would be to learn as much as I possibly can, because as a writer, you should never confine yourself to one particular thing. But to me, long form copy that you mentioned, most people tell you that's a dying craft, but I want to bring that back. You see, I think there is a lot of wonderful things that you can do with long copy as opposed to short. And there's no one particular style, but rather what works, in the sense that, do I care? Every word that I pin down, that I write, I ask myself, is this enough? Do I care? Is it enough to move me? There's this old quote from Dan Wyden from Wyden and Kennedy, and he used to say, advertising fundamentally is simple. Just move me, man. Just move me. Yeah.
It's interesting. Let's talk about some brands, yeah? I'll just name some brands. And as a copywriter, tell me what sort of personality that brand is. Yeah? Like, for example, say, let's keep it simple. Maxis. What sort of personality you think that is?
Maxis, it's a tech company.
Telco.
Yeah, telco. They want to be, it's all about connection with Maxis. They want to connect. Their personality is warm, approachable. They're here to be that bridge between you and a much wider network. That's how I would say it.
Interesting. Let's stay with that for a while. Do you see, for example, that sort of copy angle can accommodate some kind of also social purpose?
Yes, because Maxis, being a telco, all about connection. Social media platforms, fundamentally being about connection. The way in which, this is a field that they own. And they can translate that in social and further reinforce that level of connection between the brand and the consumer. Saying, hey, we are your trusted partner that will enable you to reach a much wider network.
So, let's look at that word connection. Quite interesting because that can connect with a lot of purposes.
Of course.
Beyond that, the telco's initial function, so to speak. Interesting. Okay, let's look at a snack food company like Mami Double Decker. If you had to write a tagline for them, what sort of writing would you suggest?
To me, fun, playful, something that pulls you, you know? It's that fun lure that gives you that little chuckle. That would be my approach for a brand like that.
Will that be in the wordings? You know, like we are talking about fun, yeah? Fun is such a large element, you know? Will you be able to capture it in words and communicate that?
Fun is a starting point. And from there, you filter out words, you filter out certain terminologies that, going back to what I said earlier, that really make you feel something that is in relation to where the brand comes from, its values, its personality. Another thing I want to say, when you write as a copywriter, you're sort of being an actor where you get to embrace certain roles because each brand is different, as you say. And you put on a mask, you dress up, and your mind enters a phase where you embody the character and you write as that character. And that's a wonderful thing to me.
Very interesting. Let's talk about AI. Now you have a copywriter's assistant, so to speak, yeah, with a few million people teaching AI how to write this or how to write that. Of course, the AI does more than that, yeah. How are you dealing or how are you wrestling with AI? It is helping you, not helping you? Are you teaching it or is it teaching you?
You see, the thing about AI is, to me, it's another tool in my arsenal. And if you look at history in general, especially advertising, since its inception, our industry has been defined by the mediums that have shaped it, from print to radio to TV, the internet, and now AI. And now we've reached a point where AI enables you to have exponential growth. You can learn so much from it. But fundamentally, as with any tool, it's only as good as its user. You see, the way you approach AI, for me, is to have a conversation with it. Because now we are in a time where these are not just normal machines, they're thinking machines. So when we converse with them, I get this, in my creative process, I have this partner of sorts where I get to have this back and forth. And I get to come up with some interesting ideas, but I don't see it as a replacement. I see it as a tool that empowers me to do more.
Good. Where do you see yourself maybe 3 years from now?
Oh, wow. Well, can I be really optimistic?
Please.
I'd like to be CD in 3 years.
Sure. Creative director.
Of course. I mean, most people tell you, oh, you're still too young and whatnot, but to me, I'm driven by optimism, I'm driven by passion, and I'm driven by ambition. You know, and the further I can go, the greater I feel as an individual.
That's very interesting. I want to thank you for sharing today. And I like to add that while you are thinking of becoming a creative director, you are probably already a creative director. In the sense that you're already orchestrating everything in your mind to try to provide the best output through your writing. And moving forward, I think a creative director would be just a logical progression. Yeah. And I wish you well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Laxshmaan Balakrishnan, a young and hungry copywriter. And we wish him well moving forward. And thank you for joining.